When's the last time you thought about the theme of your campaign? Not just the story arc or the genre, but the emotional core. Maybe your players think they are hunting a dragon, but the campaign is really about legacy. Or maybe it's about survival. Or maybe it's about freedom, specifically individual freedom. Hi, welcome back to the Bearded Nerd Podcast, your source for storytelling tools, world building wisdom, and all things tabletop. I'm your host, Brian, and today we're exploring how powerful themes can transform your game from a fun adventure to an unforgettable story. We'll go over why it's important to have a theme, how to choose the correct campaign theme, then how to embed that theme into gameplay. Before we dive into this episode, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so that you can get notifications of future podcasts. Without further ado, let's dive into it. What is a theme? Why does it even matter? In my opinion, a theme is the underlying idea or the central question to your campaign. Is the story about redemption? Is it about control versus freedom? Is it about sacrifice? That theme will help guide decisions and really what encounters to use, which NPCs show up, and what kind of conflicts would emerge from this game. They can also give players a lens to reflect on their character choices. This is something that you would discuss during your session 0, but a great example would be the pitch. What is your campaign pitch? Could be a war-torn kingdom divided by prophecy. The theme of that would be fate versus free will. Predestination even. Now, while you build NPCs and factions and moral choices around those questions, your players will have the information they need to create a character. Do they want to create a character, perhaps a cleric, who serves a god that is all about free will, therefore defining or even defending or being someone who is abhorring the prophecy itself, taking the prophecy and saying, I completely reject this. Maybe that's their cleric character. Maybe they play a paladin who is sworn, or who has sworn an oath rather, to protect the prophecy. Maybe they're playing a monk in which they believe, maybe their faction believes, that the prophecy has no place in the world and therefore try to get rid of it. They try to stamp it out completely. Whatever it may be, having your theme ready and pitched to the players will allow them to build a character that goes in line with the story that you are trying to tell alongside your players. A great example of this would be seen in Critical Role. In their latest episodes, when they are running Daggerheart during their session 0s, you see a lot of these thematic elements being discussed. Now, most GMs, whether they host a live play or not, will have these themes kind of brought up in the session 0, but then continued on later in the campaign. The theme may and should evolve as time progresses, but you will have that conversation with your players or with your GM to kind of understand where that's going and to get a grasp for it. Understand where the theme is now versus where it started. This is always a great thing, but again, you must choose the theme. And the theme is important because it helps guide the decisions of both the GM and the player. Now, we go on to choosing a campaign theme. This part is a bit of an internal reflection. you need to ask yourself, what kind of emotional journey do you want your players to have? What are you passionate about exploring in the story? And what's a question you don't know the answer to, but want the players to help uncover? Again, this is part of the collaboration of storytelling that you would have the opportunity to discuss during session 0. Let's break down the questions. What kind of emotional journey do you want your players to have? Do you want them to have moments of anger or frustration at the dilemma, the moral dilemma specifically, of the campaign? Do your players want to have a silly, joking, kind of slapstick humor in the campaign? Do you want them to essentially have a, quote, lethal weapon buddy cop feeling? Do you want them to have a, quote, Naked Gun series campaign where it is slapstick comedy, witty? Imagine or picture if Mel Brooks was the game master. Do you want it to be the emotional journey of just fun and adventure and laughter and hilarity? What do you want your players to have and go through? And then you ask, what do they want to experience? Then you listen. Then you ask yourself again, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy exploring in the story? Do you want something that would resemble Vox Machina, a story of heroes against all odds fighting the pantheon, so to speak? Do you want your players to experience that type of harrowing story? And then you ask them, what are they passionate about and what do they want to explore? And lastly, you ask the question, or rather, you ask yourself the question and then your players what you don't know the answer to. And that might seem a little bit more philosophical, but we'll break that down further. What do you want your players to uncover? Do you want mystery to be uncovered? Do you want to have openness to the story that you allow your players to fill in? This question and that last question, I recommend keeping private until the very, middle of your campaign, the part where it starts to evolve. This will help you choose your campaign theme and really solidify what the theme is for your game. And each game, even if you run it with the same players, will have a different theme, or at least I hope it does. And furthermore, if you actually run the same campaign, quote unquote, in the same game world, you will have different themes and elements as the campaign transitions and as the story unfolds. So it is natural to have that campaign and that theme evolve, but you gotta start somewhere and choose a theme. Now, let's talk about embedding the theme into gameplay. What is the way, or what is the proper way to embed a theme into your campaign, into your game? I think there are 4 great ways to do so: the combat encounters, the factions and the cultures, the NPCs, and the magic and lore of the world. From a combat encounter, those, in my opinion, can shape the moral dilemmas that are tied to your theme. Do you provide an opportunity for your players to rescue hostages, especially if one of your players is a noble knight, for example? Or do they stop the villain instead of rescuing the hostage? They can't do both. They have to choose. That shapes your theme to the moral dilemma or the ethical aspects of your game. What do you want to do? How is combat handled and explored in this theme? Are they just crazy adventurers hacking and slashing everything they see? Or do they have a moral code? From there, the factions and cultures of the world are going to be represented by the players, if done so properly. Each group represents a different stance on the theme. One faction may believe in the control at any cost, right? They want to have absolute control, while another faction may believe that chaos is needed to preserve individual freedom. So those factions and cultures may clash, which therefore reflects furthermore your theme. Then you have your NPCs. These NPCs will mirror or will foil the themes of the game and also the player characters. A redeemed villain forces the paladin to confront mercy. This paladin does not want to be merciful to the villain that maybe destroyed their hometown or their village, and they swore that oath of revenge. But the villain has sought to redeem themselves. They've turned over a new leaf. And then it forces the paladin in your party to either be merciful or to exact their revenge. That is the thematic element that really makes storytelling so awesome. And then lastly, you have your magic and lore. You may have to build mechanics around your theme, right? So if you have a cursed item and it tempts one of your players towards vengeance, that may be something where you may implement a forgiveness benefit. If that player character, in this case the paladin, rejects the cursed item from their, patron of sorts and forgives the redeemed villain, that cursed item becomes blessed and there's a certain benefit or a mechanical benefit. You may have to build those things into it, but those four together, and especially the lore aspect, the history of all this that you've built around it, will help embed that theme and really immerse your players in that theme. Now, as a bonus part that I want to ensure that you take with you to your game is to use your theme to frame your finale. Did the party actually change the world, or did they change themselves? Did they change aspects of reality or their perception of it? And after your game, you can talk to your players and ask them, okay, what do you think the story was really about? And you can just ask each player in like an interview style how they think their character wrestled with the theme. And you'll be amazed at what they say. I believe it's important to have that post-campaign conversation because it really helps you in that regard. I'll take an example from my Star Wars game. In my Star Wars game, the theme, I have a couple of interlaid themes. One of them being what happens or what would happen in a world where fate can kind of be manipulated, where the multiverse of Star Wars, so to speak, is present and you can kind of pluck that string a little bit. What would happen? And that theme came from an original question of where were you during Order 66? It was a one-shot that I ran. And the theme was really about what would the players do? And then I had to ask myself the question, well, what would happen if there was an organization who was trying to prevent the Chancellor from rising and actually trying to do some good? But because the way, character choices are made, you get what you get in the original series or story. But my theme overall was, can we change fate? Can we do something to change fate, or is fate just set? And although the theme has kind of gone up and down, around, and has kind of weaved in and out, the theme is still there, but we've explored and evolved from that original theme. And I can't wait to discuss with my players what their thoughts are on the campaign and the theme. but we're not there yet because we haven't finished the campaign. But that's just a little excerpt. That's kind of how I have lived and breathed this episode and how I have incorporated into my own game. Because, again, in my opinion, the themes are the invisible thread that ties everything together. You don't have to say them out loud if you don't want to, but when your players feel them and when you feel them, that's how you can tell that story will be remembered forever. But thanks for listening to the Bearded Nerd Podcast, your source for storytelling tools, world building wisdom, and all things tabletop. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review. Share it with your group. Anything of that nature would be greatly appreciated. And go ahead and check out Patreon to grab your theme design toolkit. It's got 12 plug-and-play themes, question prompts, and printable worksheet for a session 0. The link will be in the show notes. I appreciate y'all listening. Much love. And as always, keep gaming.